the stage. This is sharing ideas. These are just categories to speak to. What do y'all do? Like apologizing to others? What do you like? Especially actually, it could apply to all. Does anyone have a policy for that? Tell them you're sorry. Right? These are things that we don't think about a lot. My strategy for apologizing to others, and this is third graders, but I think it'd apply, and with my own children, by the way. I'm sorry, and Molly taught me this. I'm sorry that not I'm sorry that you, like, because I'd try to get away with, like, I'm sorry that you felt that I was rude earlier. Like, no, it's I'm sorry that I was. So I'm sorry that I to the other person, and then as they're doing it, they have to look each other 5 seconds in the eyes. This is my little. So I'm sorry that I did this to you, and then the other one says, I forgive you. And I'm like, okay, 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3. By the time you're to 3, they're typically laughing, which is awesome because that in the end, that's what you want is like that at least perceived reconciliation, and then like, okay, we're ready to move on. And so that was just something I did. Anyone? How about fast finishers? Anyone else? We all have the student that finishes what we tried to pass out quickly. I'm done. Now what? And you got somebody who's just writing their date. Right? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. What if they're tactile and kinesthetic learners and need to express themselves through bodily movement? Right. How about making those students, I would turn my fast finishers into I call them mini teachers or tutors, like helping somebody. And then, by the way, you can't just say go help them. You have to train students how to help others, right? Just like we train students at UT, and we all need training as teachers. One who dares to teach must never cease to learn is one of my favorite adages of teaching. So training them how to, like, hey, you're finishing. Don't give them the answer. That's not helping them, right? Help use context clues or whatever the assignment is, right? So things to consider, right? This is where Harry Wong's book doesn't really get to these types of things. I mean, he's got, entering the classroom, passing out papers, all important stuff, right? Because we all know what happens with idle hands, and at this age, any time from PK to 12, I mean, idle hands could mean 1 second of being idle, of idleness, if that's a word, right? So ideally, that's kind of what we're moving towards. All right, second dude, I have a 3 there. Second dude is Jacob Coonan. You may or may not have heard of him, doesn't matter. I actually had to look his name up because it was really an idea when I was being trained back at Texas State in 2001, whatever. I had to look him up to see who came up with the idea. 1920, whatever. His best-known work was in the 70s. Y'all remember Open Concept? Some of y'all have been in the teaching profession long enough to remember that brilliant strategy. What was Open Concept? Open classrooms, right? Let's break down those walls. What happened to it? Yeah, and at Odom, where we used to teach, remember, like as a fallout of Open Concept, we couldn't build. I didn't have a door in my classroom, and I didn't have a full wall. Remember that, Jenny? Because they built the entire AC and heating system around Open Concept, and when they said this is a flop, this is not working, they couldn't close the walls off. But for those of you who don't know, it was like knocking down the walls, and so you can imagine pre-Kers over here, like all your pre-K classes can see all your pre-K classes. And as he was doing observations, he noticed something called the ripple effect, which was if you're over here bawling out like, what are y'all doing? A student is getting reprimanded or there's some classroom management happening. he noticed that other students that were watching kind of sat up a little straighter and were like, oh, better get my act together too, because, right? Which is a positive thing, but the opposite of that was that, like, there were so many distractions, right? Anyway, I'm not here to, there are people trying to bring that back, by the way. It's what I call, Coonan was more like what I call the Barney Fife principle, nipping it in the bud, right? Nip it. Here's another one I use with my students. Forest fires begin with a single spark, right? All it takes is one little thing, and then poof, it's just, volatile. So he had these 5 concepts. The one that actually brought me to him as I was preparing for this was with itness. Because that's what my professor talked about back in the day. With itness is exactly how it sounds. What's going on at all times? Positioning, like you, as teachers, you know how it is. You are having to have this knowledge of content, right? And you're also having to see, you're scanning constantly, like, oh, someone's over there playing, under the, digging around on their desk, and it's constant scanning. And he says it's not that you have to have omniscience, but you have to make the kids think that you are omniscient. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a perceived omniscience there, that you know what's going on all of the time, right? This can happen, like, this is a kind of a classic mistake that I see my novice teachers do. When, like, we're all in a room, and a student raises their hand, and you need to go and help them, they turn their back, like, okay, how can I help you with this, right? They get on their level, that's good. But instead of, like, getting next to them, and, like, I can still have a conversation here with Ryan, and, like, yeah, dude, so you're having problems with 2 + 2? It's no problem, everybody does. And then occasionally check back with him there, and constantly be scanning, because the second everyone, does anyone have any strategies, comments, or thoughts on that? With itness, being with it, right? Yeah, what's up, dude?
One of my favorite tricks for the perceived omniscience is to catch a student doing something wrong and not call it out right away, but wait until I've turned my back and I'm mid-sentence writing on the board and be like, Jeff, spit out your gum. And don't even look. And they'll be like, how?
How does he know? Dude, that is good teaching.
So you just hold on to it for a split sec,
Yeah.
and then it's like you've got eyes everywhere.
Right. Dude, thank you for sharing. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Because I don't want everybody hearing what that
Right.
conversation is.
Confidentiality.
Or whatever, I don't know. And I will, like, let the student back in, and then I'll just stare in the window. And then I come back in, and I'll ask, like, how were y'all?
Yeah, good.
And I'm like, but you were up, and you were, and they're like,
Yes, exactly. That's good. Those types of strategies are so effective, right? I like the kind of the delayed, yeah, that's good. That's good, dude. All right, I'm going to continue. I'm thinking of other ones, but I need to move on. All right, so zooming in and panning out that idea, that framework I was talking about, what's happening with students individually, and then how is the lesson going? Like, how am I doing teaching? How am I doing speaking to y'all right now? Are people getting it? That's reading that body language. People are nodding, or people are pretending to nod. There's a kind of a movement right now. It's called, what is it? It's like SLANT. Does anyone know it? It's AVID. Like advancement via individual determination or something. It's big in the public schools. And it's like SLANT. All right, SLANT, the teacher calls SLANT. And it's like they're all supposed to sit up and lean in. And what is it? But one of them, SLANT, yeah, nod. Like, you can be thinking about whatever you want, but just nod. And that's what smart people do, right? So it's like kind of teaching them this, this way to do that. Here's a common issue I see with the UT pre-service teachers when I'm doing field observations. They're so nervous about their being tethered. They get tethered to their lesson plan. They're so worried that they're not going to hit one of those critical questions about, like, what they're supposed to ask the kids, and that they're just looking at their lesson plan as they're doing a read aloud or something, and the lesson plan's like right here, and half the time they're like, okay, what's here? The kids are like fighting in the back, and they're like, okay, so what did y'all think led to that in the story? They're not even listening, right? That's lack of with itness. And then there's the opposite side of that is just like the lesson plan was never there to begin with, so it's just kind of like, y'all cut these out, paste them, and then put them somewhere, and go read, you know. It's really inspirational. Okay, so overlapping has to do again with multitasking, nonverbals we mentioned. I use it, once you laser pointer, you never go back, I'm telling you. You do have to be careful not to, brush it across the retina or anything, but like, they're so helpful because I can be doing whatever and with laser precision point out what's going on and never even, like, other kids don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I could just, bust it out. Like, yeah, if y'all see up here. And the kid, it's hilarious because you want to talk about Pavlov's dog kind of stuff. Like, they'll hear me grab my keys. I mean, just this. They're like, they sit up. They know. The dreaded grabbing for laser, right? So again, this is what he called overlapping, right? Any strategies? This is kind of the same as of that other one. A lot of his is overlapping. Momentum, roll with it. Dr. Nathan Bond said the F word of teaching, which is what? Besides fun. Flexibility is what it is. The F word of teaching, you have to be flexible. When someone brings up an issue, like for example, like off-topic stuff, how do you deal with your tangentials? That'll be a question you'll talk about in a second. That's the declarative versus procedural knowledge, like what you know, what you're trying to declare, like we're teaching states of matter, and then how do I teach states of matter, okay? I need to kind of hurry. Speaking of staying on track, rabbit trails, tangents. Are they tangents or are they really lateral thinking, divergent thinking? Sometimes with my sixth graders, someone will be like way off topic. I'm like, put the onus on them. Tell me how that relates to the fact that Mary was cool with the angel visiting her and telling her that she was going to have a child. You do that. You tell me. And then it's kind of a fun game for them to try to piece that together. Or if they can, I'm like, that's off topic, right? And back with my third graders, they would call it before I could. They were so well trained. Someone would ask something random, and half the class like, off topic, So using just a quick, like, our kids don't even often know that things are, you can't just say whatever comes to your head, right? Despite what your teacher does. Does the lesson have cohesion? I'm going to keep moving. Engaging whole class, build suspense, wait time, turn and talk. Do you leave space? That's one of the most unique sounds in our society. So easy too, right? Like, I have not been doing a good job because I've got to get things done here quickly, but space is powerful, right? One of the best teachers I ever saw, Vicki Martinez, she's retired now. She used to teach her, I always bring this story up to my pre-service teachers. She'd be like, her level of teaching was right here, like, guys, if y'all would please pull out your books and turn to page 35. Devin, I see you're not doing that. Will you please go change your clip? Like, she would teach at that level. And you walk into that class, and I'm not equating silence with good teaching or good learning, because it can be, being boisterous can be awesome, and it should be. Learning should be fun and expressive. But we set the tone, right? We set the level of what we do, of our class, right? And then lastly is engagement, call and response. I have many of these. First comes accuracy, then comes speed. You cannot know the answer until you know the question. We don't leave things how we found them, we leave them better. Freedom is a privilege. If you abuse it, you lose it, right? I actually can say you cannot know the answer. I forget it. It doesn't matter. All right. I learned it in Bosnian is what I was going to say, because I had some Bosnian students. But this population doesn't really lend itself that much to that. All right. Ongoing building of class culture. Referencing past happenings, like, oh, remember when so-and-so, reference the past with them, right? Something funny happened in class. Keep going back to that. You're building a family album with these students, right? Integrating students' interests. I don't really care about Minecraft. I really don't. But I hear students talking about it, and so I think it's important for me at least to know a little of the general language, right? To be able to connect. right? I give off-topic mini lessons. I know you're probably shocked by that. We have a section of random trivia before we get into like biblical stuff. And at the end, right before the right before the break happened, I was like, "Tell me something you've really learned. You know, how has God spoken to you like this semester?" And they all talked about random trivia. So I'm glad I'm really reaching them deeply for the Lord. I give a Spanish word of the day, just random, like stuff like that just kind of keeps them guessing, right? If it's too predictable, they're going to be like, okay, I know what's up here. Anecdotal sharing, which I'm doing. Offering small incentives, like the last 2 class minutes of class to chat. And again, being vulnerable is uber important. All right, so let's do, I don't know, let's just do a whole thing and share out. I hate that verbal phrase, share out, because how do you share any other way? But it was real popular in AIC and it stuck. So what are ways that you nip things in the bud in your classroom? Does anyone want to share? If not, I'm going to make you do small groups. So I'm going to pull sticks. Yes, ma'am.
Proximity. Just go stand next to the
Yep.
student that's trying to
Huge. Are we the Madeline Hunter transmission model where we just stand up here and talk, or do you circulate through the room, right? That's very powerful. Just little things, right? There's nothing wrong with Madeline Hunter. Sometimes it lends itself for that. A lot of it is content specific, but good. Anyone else? Yes.
Redirect their attention into like a job that I may or may not actually need done. But like, hey, can you move those books over here just before it gets going and the other
Yes.
student starts picking up on it?
Awesome. Yeah, you see it starting to escalate. Like, so-and-so, could you grab that? Could you? Yeah, give them, it says idle hands, right? They want to do something, right? And if they're tactile or, yeah. Could you go sharpen all my pencils and organize my entire cabinet, please? And by the way, use that power. Like, I used to have, my class was immaculate, not because of me, because of that exact thing. Like, my crayons and stuff, they were organized by, here's all my reds, shades of red, shades of orange, shades of blue, because that kind of stuff. Really good. All right, one more, or maybe I should go. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of times we just stop talking.
Yeah.
And eventually the kids will tell all the other kids to be quiet.
Yeah, they pick up on that silence, right? So good, so true. Okay, here are some ways that students or humans seek attention, right? Humor, playing dumb, distractions, random comments, physical, pushback, discrediting authority, and many other ways, superiority. So what do we do when our students are not choosing to follow that path? Practical things, just real, conferencing with student, what is the real issue, right? Nobody cares how much you know till what? They know how much you care, right? I hate to be pulling out all these like fortune cookie like things for y'all, but they're true. So, how can I help you make the right choice? This was always one that really worked for me. Like, the easiest thing for me to do right now is just to, the easiest, I'd pull them out in the hall or whatever. The easiest thing for me to do right now is just let you do whatever, You're taking away time from the class. You're taking away time from your learning. You're kind of being selfish here. So, but because I care for you, repeat, because I care for you, I'm here and I want to get to the bottom of this kind of thing, right? And people understand the path of least resistance, because if you frame things as this is the easiest thing for me to do, just let you sit over there and not learn, they understand that, right? What does that look like in SL or SR? Like, dude, you're being utterly self-centered and not taking into consideration, whatever your register is with your students, Marks, how do we give them? Or is there emotional baggage when you give marks? Do you get emotionally involved when it's time, or is it just kind of like an emotionless, like, you chose this, you got this, right? If you have to get emotionally engaged, to that point, you're probably not going to give marks very much, because you don't want to have that little mini roller coaster. You might avoid giving marks when you need to give them, right? Anyone have a way they give marks? Again, this is back to procedural stuff. Do you just, yeah?
Sometimes it takes too long to do it on my phone.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So I have a special marker, and on the right side of the board, I just write their name, make them see me teaching, and they know that they got a mark.
Yeah.
And I know that can be embarrassing, but at the same time, I don't want to take away from the lesson.
Yeah,
Just two people, two
Yeah, no, I hear you. You know, sometimes a little bit of humble pie happens publicly. This past semester, something interesting happened to me at UT. This one dude, this kind of strange, you know, he just was kind of strange dude. I mean, um, he found like there was one of those little sticky balls that you throw against a wall and it like crawls down or whatever, and he threw it across the room and nearly hit this other guy and this this guy was from Oak Cliff. I don't know if y'all know where Oak Cliff is in Dallas, and people in Oak Cliff typically ain't gonna handle that very well, and so he's like, you know, what the, you know, like cussing like F-bombs and everything. And I'm sitting there like, this is so weird. Like, I never have to deal with this at the university level, right? Because it's like, you don't want to be here, don't go. That's better, you know, whatever. And so there was this awkward exchange, and I just sat there. I'm like, I didn't know how to intervene. And after this guy who almost got hit by the thing, he was like, you know, bowing up, and this guy was like, I see that you're not feeling well, but what I really don't appreciate is how you're making me feel in front of everybody. And I'm like, I tried to contain my look, but I was like, dude, you invited that upon yourself. I mean, what do you want him to do? Like, applaud you? Sometimes there's some public things that, you know, need to happen. It would happen to us, right? Of course, abusing that is not what we want. Reaching out to parents, of course, what I call the triangle of student success, like using, if one of the vertices falls, right? I used to draw out this triangle, like there's a student, parent, teacher. If one of them falls, you've got like a two-sided triangle, which is not possible, but it's terrible. Contracts, I was the master of contracts at my school. They'd come to me, and some kids with impulsivity issues needed a contract, right? Sign for raising your hand, good. You know, like, sign for blurting out, good. You know, just emotionless, just having them constantly monitor their behavior, and it helped. Of course, you don't want to start one of these without talking to administration and parents and getting everybody on board. At this school, at Odom, I could start up whatever. You know, it was it was just a different community. It was an ethnic enclave, mainly immigrants. They supported. It's different. This is a different thing for working here. There was it was like, lo que diga el maestro, whatever the teacher says. In Latin American countries, teachers are still held to this, you know, how they were here in the 50s. Like, we support the teacher first, right? And that might not always be how it is here. It's different here as opposed to other schools of this SES. Okay, something to remember, it's often less about anti-teacher or anti-institution, and it's more about pro-self, right? If you think about it. I don't think they have anything against us, per se, unless we get in the way of their pro-self campaign, right? So, and that goes into identity, and of course, Freedom in Christ does a great job at pointing that out. All right, so last one, another three, is Jesus of Nazareth, right? I would like to say I compiled this myself. We only have 7 minutes, so y'all hold. These are 9 characteristics of Jesus as a teacher, just as a teacher, not as a savior, you know, not as the other. And so pretty powerful things, I thought. He taught with power. His teaching was unique and individualized, personalized, right? Various places, various people. Are you a teacher just when you come and clock in here, or are you a teacher wherever you go, right? If you're a parent, you're a teacher no matter what. Teaching with compassion, right? Are you more about your content, or are you more about like the development of the child and your content, right? Through your content. Teach scholars. He knew his stuff backwards and forwards. I don't know. It's hard when I'm sitting watching a student, pre-service teacher, teaching like states of matter, and they don't know the states of matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't know. It's hard for me to be like, well, yeah, you know, like Jell-O doesn't really fit, you know, whatever. Like, trying to explain to them that, you know, you have to know your stuff, right? And the more you know it, the more you can engage people with it. Placing people first instead of our class control, right? Challenged his followers. We challenge our students, right? We don't want them to just stay where they are. Taught with authority and purpose, right? And lastly, he taught his disciples to talk to God, right? Isn't that ultimately what we're trying to point our kids to? So how do we do it as teachers, right? I think we use these categories here. Let's see. Real fast, I mentioned this just in passing. This is an interesting demographic compared to what I've taught before. What's typical in studies and whatnot is like middle upper class is known to be very individualistic, right? Like it's kind of bootstraps. You take care of you and you escalate, right? Not every facet of community of our society or any society is like that for many reasons. But when we make mistakes individually, it rarely is just an individual issue, right? Does it not bleed out or ripple out into the community? Certainly does, right? So that's just something to keep in the back of our head as far as kind of our demographic here. It's different dealing with believers, of course. That's one beauty is that we're like, hey, our ultimate authority is Scripture, right? I found these, I was started to look through this lens when I was preparing for this thing, and God deals with us both individually and collectively, right? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. No creature, singular, is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed, right? So there's an individual and a collective, things that we need to kind of keep in mind, right? Zooming in and panning out. Zooming in, what is the individual's issue, right? What's going on? Is it stuff at home? It's hard to, by the way, it's hard to deal with things with this demographic in general, people who are successful, when things are going wrong at home. I'll just tell you that, it's far easier in other scenarios. And then how does this issue affect everyone else, right? If you're looking really for a democratic education where everybody is able to participate, if one person is, bogarting all the attention or whatever, there's, it affects everybody. That's just how God is set things up. All right, so I've got 3 minutes, and I timed it better than I thought I was. So these are, how do we, where, final thoughts, where, what, when, how, with whom is the work of the Holy Spirit, right? We started in the depths of me, right, bearing my soul, went to some practical stuff, and as believers here, I'm bringing us back down to your individual relationship with God, ultimately, right? So here are the fruits of the Spirit, as you know. And if we're not inviting the Spirit into our classroom as we teach and not praying for our students as we teach, and we can assume that our students might not be either, good luck, It's kind of like just, I don't know what to tell you, right? I mean, so as your, the last thing I'm going to do is going to pass you out, like just something a little takeaway, is ask yourself, you probably know what you're strong at here, and this fluctuates every day, right? I mean, but what could this semester, what could you do? What are fruits of the Spirit that might need a little care, a little pruning, a little water, a little something like that? And I've made a little. This I actually did compile. I've made a something for you to put wherever you have your quiet time, wherever you spend time with God. And if on your weakest ones, let's say it's love, I've put a bunch of verses there that you can kind of reflect upon, pray through. As being a teacher, and of course, we're not just teachers, we're individuals and followers of Christ. What did Jesus do as a teacher? I mentioned these already, right? That's how he did it. That's what he did. How do we know it's the Spirit leading us? Well, let's look at the fruits, right? Is this what's leading us, right? So let's see. I forgot what I have next. I was going to finish with this, but this is kind of bad. This is when I was first putting it together. You wouldn't believe how many slides I had when I first started this thing. What kind of finishing touch is this? Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. So if y'all don't follow this, you are dumb. See ya. Whatever. So this is the final command. I thought this was interesting from the master teacher himself. He gave an instructive command to us, not his final words, right? It is finished. He said, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I'm with you to the end of the age." So he's telling us, like he's teaching us here what to do, and he's with us to the end of the age, right? So ultimately, this is how I always finish my classes at every semester. I already said this, so it's kind of like anticlimactic. Nobody cares how much we know until they know how much we care. Like, thanks and stuff for listening. All right, I'm going to pass these out to everybody, and then I think it's lunchtime for you. I don't know.
Okay.